Rod Liddell sound off on the week's biggest talking points, and I'll bring you a first look at the front pages with my superstar panel. The Daily Mail columnist Amanda Platel, the Conservative commentator Albie Amankona, and the Royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. That's Dan Wootton tonight, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Monday to Thursday on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good evening, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into all the stories that have got you talking today. Now, it's estimated that more than 20 migrants crossing the Channel today have died when their boat capsized. What is it going to take for our government to get a hold of this situation? And COVID cases are on the rise again. Do you think we'd ever face another lockdown? And if we did, what do you reckon would be the compliance to it this time? And apparently, around a dozen MPs have filed letters of no confidence in Boris Johnson to the 1922 committee. Is Berger the right man for the job? And Brexit Britain, how do we make it thrive? All that and more coming up, but first, the news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Tamsin Roberts. These are your latest headlines. The Prime Minister will chair an emergency COBRA meeting after at least 30 migrants died trying to cross the English Channel. The accident comes as British authorities continue to intercept a growing number of migrant boats. Recent figures show more than 25,700 people have reached the UK this year, 3 times more than all of 2020. 2 police officers who shared crime scene photos describing the victims as dead birds have been sacked. Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman were killed in northwest London in June last year. PC Jamie Lewis and Dennis Jaffa, who strayed from the cordon to take photos, admitted posting them on WhatsApp. A tribunal found them guilty of gross misconduct, describing their actions as shameful. Boris Johnson has defended his social care plan after Labour accused him of creating a working-class dementia tax. Earlier this week, the government voted through plans to change how contributions are calculated towards an £86,000 limit for social care. During PMQs, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said the measures would impact the poorest hardest.
Working people are being asked to pay twice. During their working lives, they'll pay much more tax in national insurance, whilst those living off wealth are protected. And then when they retire, Mr. Speaker, they face having to sell their home when the wealthiest won't have to do so.
We're delivering for the working people of this country. We're delivering for the people of this country. And we're fixing the problems that they thought could never be fixed. We're doing the things that they thought were impossible.
Offenders who kill an emergency service worker while they're on duty will be given mandatory life jail sentences. The change in law follows a 2-year campaign by Lizzie Harper, whose husband, police officer Andrew, was killed while responding to a late-night burglary call. 3 teenagers were cleared of murder but convicted of manslaughter. One of the world's top footballers, France and Real Madrid forward Karim Benzema, has been convicted of trying to help blackmail a former international teammate. The 33-year-old has been given a 1-year suspended jail term and ordered to pay a £63,000 fine. Prosecutors argued that he encouraged Mathieu Valbuena to pay a suspected group of blackmailers in order to keep a sex tape out of the public eye. Benzema wasn't in court but denies any wrongdoing and will appeal the verdict. The Home Office should be stripped of responsibility for the Windrush compensation scheme. That's according to a cross-party group of MPs. The Home Affairs Committee found what it says were a litany of flaws in the way the department operates. It's recommended the scheme is transferred to an independent organisation so claimants have more trust in it. As of the end of September, only 20% of the estimated 15,000 eligible claimants had applied, with only 5% receiving any compensation. It's the shortest ever stint as Prime Minister, but Sweden's first female in the role has quit just hours after being selected. Magdalena Andersson resigned after suffering a budget defeat in Parliament. She said it was about respect and legitimacy. And NASA has launched a spacecraft to try and crash into an asteroid in a bid to change its course. The target isn't a threat.
3, 2, 1. And liftoff.
The target isn't a threat, but scientists hope if it's successful, they'll learn things which will help them stop hazardous asteroids in the future. The collision is looking to change the speed of the asteroid and therefore change its trajectory. The spacecraft is due to meet the asteroid next September. Well, that's all the news for now. Let's get back to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that. Well, keeping me company here until 7 o'clock, my panel, the author Ella Whelan, serial technology and media entrepreneur David Tabersall, and journalist Mark Roche. Good evening to all of you. And you know the drill by now, don't you? It's not just about us and our opinions. I always like to hear from you. So do get in touch with anything that's on your mind tonight. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. Love to hear your opinions, so do get them coming in. But first, our top story. As you probably have been hearing in the news, at least 30 bodies have been recovered after a boat carrying migrants has capsized in the English Channel. A French mayor has confirmed the death, saying another 26 were rescued. The accident comes as British authorities continue to intercept a growing number of migrant boats. The latest figures show that more than 25,700 people have reached the UK this year. That's 3 times more than in 2020. So let's go over to Dover in Kent there, where our home and security editor, Mark White, is live. Mark, what can you tell us about the latest here?
Well, this was a migrant boat that had left the shores of France between the ports of Calais and Dunkirk today when it capsized some way offshore, tossing those on board into the water. There was a full-scale search and rescue operation which continues tonight. Now, so far there have been mixed reports on the number of people who have lost their lives. Initial reports from French authorities suggested 5 people had died and more than 20 others had been rescued from the water. Since then, there have been 2 other reports putting the death toll much higher. The latest, in fact, attributing the mayor of Calais, Natasha Bouchard, saying that 27 migrants have drowned in this tragedy. Now, if true, that is an extraordinary loss of life. And of course, we have heard from the Home Secretary Priti Patel, her counterparts on the French side of the Channel, for some time, warning about the potential for a very significant tragedy in the English Channel, warning people not to make that perilous journey. There have been losses of lives in recent weeks. In fact, about 8 people have died in separate incidents, mainly on the French side of the Channel. But this today, if confirmed, that we are talking about more than 20, perhaps pushing on 30 people who have died in the English Channel. It is just horrific. It's unlikely that it will do anything, though, to temper the operation of the people smugglers who have thus far really had a very successful operation in terms of knowing that they push boats out into the English Channel, that they are effectively intercepted by UK authorities when they cross that line into British waters, and then they're brought to UK ports for processing and enter the asylum system. 25,000, more than 25,000 so far this year. That is 3 times the number who crossed in the whole of last year, which again was 3 times the previous year. You can see the trajectory that we're in here. It is of great concern to the UK government. The French government say they take it very seriously as well, although the British government have been rather critical about whether they have been doing all they can to actually stop the boats pushing off from those French beaches in the first place. Well, tonight they are faced with a very significant tragedy in their waters, and there will be questions asked of the French authorities and whether enough was done on that side of the Channel. Here on this side of the Channel, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, is hosting he's chairing an emergency meeting of the Crisis Cabinet Cobra to determine exactly what happened. This is not just a French maritime rescue operation. The British are involved. There are maritime assets from the UK in the form of helicopters and rescue vessels from the UK that are involved in what is now a systematic search of that area for any other survivors. Although I have to say, Michelle, so long in the water in these horrific conditions, it is unlikely that anyone will have survived this long.
Yeah, and I have to say, I think you summarise it very well there, Mark, and it is an evolving situation. I'm just conscious there that when you was confirming 27 deaths underneath on the screen there, it said at least 30. I just want to be clear there to our viewers. This is, of course, evolving as we speak. Mark, do we know anything about the makeup of who these people are?
Well, we don't know where they're from. No, there are people who come from a number of countries. Interestingly, I was in the English Channel today with GBNews presenter Nigel Farage. We were out in the middle of the Channel and came across a migrant boat right up close and personal. It was only a few feet from us. They switched their engine off, as they always do, because what they look to do when they get into the Channel and into the British side of the English Channel is to be rescued. And what they will do, quite cynically, because it's passed on to them as best practice from the people smugglers in order to ensure that you will get picked up by the British authorities, is to, if they've got a phone signal, dial 999 and say that the boat is in difficulties, or say that people are in the water, or say that people are suffering from exposure. Whatever you have to say and do to get the British authorities out there to pick you up. And that happens day in, day out, multiple times a day. It was happening today as we were in the channel. This boat, it switched its engine off and they held a young child. It was mainly men, but there were in this boatload of 22 people who said they were from Iraq and Iran. There were 2 women and 1 infant. They held the infant up to say that the infant was very cold and please get the rescue services. Our skipper, of course, is duty-bound to do exactly that, contacted the Coast Guard. But at that time, the Coast Guard couldn't attend because the Coast Guard, or at least the lifeboat and border force couldn't attend right away because they were dealing with multiple other incidents right down the channel and back in Dover, where they were taking various people that they had recovered from boats in the English Channel to be processed. So there was nothing available for about an hour and a half. The Coast Guard helicopter came flying overhead for a time. Then the lifeboat from Dover arrived and picked them up. Now this was one boat that made that journey today, packed out. The people made it to British waters and into the hands of British authorities. Their colleagues just further towards France tried that same journey, heading off, we understand, from the same beach and didn't make that journey.
Goodness me, it's just horrific, isn't it? Mark White, thanks for that. Before I just let you go, I've got a few viewers in actually emailing in asking for clarity. This capsize that we've just been talking about, was that in the French water or the English water? Just some clarity there, if you will.
Yes, it was in French waters, but it was, as I say, this is a rescue operation that is involving maritime assets, of course, from France, but also from Britain. It is a major air and sea rescue, search and rescue operation that is underway. It happened, we understand, on a beach between Calais and Dunkirk. The boat headed out, but so often when they head out into the channel, it's those first 100 or so yards, a mile or two as they get out, that the waves can be quite overwhelming at times. It can capsize these vessels. We've had similar incidents. Luckily, up until now, there has been no major loss of life. That all changed today in the English Channel. There will be very far-reaching questions that the British and French governments will be asking. They know that this is a crisis that they've got to get to grips with. They say they're after the people smugglers. I have to say as well, the National Crime Agency contacted me earlier today to say that they have successfully prosecuted a number of people smugglers involved in operations on the French side. But for every people smuggler they take out of the loop, every people smuggler that they imprison in this country or in France, there are others who are willing to take on that very lucrative enterprise. They run the risk, of course, of being caught, but they are making millions of euros a week from this enterprise of pushing thousands of people out in flimsy small boats into less than ideal conditions in one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world.
Mark White, our Home and Security Editor live from Kent there. Thank you very much for your update. I've just had it pass through to me that the number has increased since that report that we first started with, actually, and the number is now confirmed as being 30. Oh, Mark, well, sorry about that confusion there. Too many marks. I mean, this is just tragic, isn't it? And it's going on and going on. How do we stop this?
Well, it is a tragedy, but it's a British problem. Most of the migrants are English-speaking, their family here, they are from countries where British colony are under British influence, and it's the British who have to solve that. For France is not where they want to stay, it's just a springboard. And for the French, it's a real problem because it's taking people out the fight against smuggling of people from their own area, which is Northern Africa and Western Africa.
But Ella, I mean, Mark's saying there this is a French problem. I have to say, no disrespect intended, Mark, but I don't share that view, actually. I think this is probably an international problem, but this specifically, it can't just be a British problem to try and solve people coming here. It's got to have some joined-up thinking, and absolutely France, which is the country, Ella, that these people are departing from, they need to be playing their part in this as well.
Well, I mean, what is that part? I mean, I think one of the depressing factors is that so much of the discussion around how to deal... We kind of have a simultaneous discussion in which politicians and commentators say, isn't it terrible that people are losing their lives? It's awful. We really care about refugees. We should really care about them. And then the solution, mainly that politicians come up with, in particular Priti Patel, is how do we make this country more hostile? How do, we're using wave machines. How do we push boats back? And so they're kind of the facade of being all airy-fairy-carey about migrants and about refugees drops. I mean, the question I would ask is how do you change the system in order that people can come in planes and not risk their lives rather than in dinghies? I mean, either we care about having a system of asylum seeking or we don't. One of the things that I've been thinking about recently is that we've just come out of or we're not quite out of it yet, but we've had a discussion about a crisis of labour shortages. And the government's been talking about how do we make immigration rules more lax so that we have an influx of European labour to help us pick fruit and drive HGV vans and all that kind of stuff. And yet there seems to be a real hostility to allowing Iraqis or Afghanis or Syrians or Libyans to come and do that. There's a division between good and bad migrants, good and bad, and it often takes, unfortunately, quasi-racist lines. And so I think our whole way in which we talk about immigration is rather screwed up. And, the sharp end of it is that we're watching people die. And it's all very well, all of us saying it's a terrible thing. It is a terrible thing. But there has to be a wider discussion about the system of immigration and asylum seeking in this country, or we're going to continue to watch people die in the Channel. And surely that's not what we want.
David, your thoughts?
Well, first of all, what a horrible human tragedy. I mean, I'm the son of two immigrants who escaped the Nazis, and so this is personal to me. And how desperate do you have to be, guys, to have to jump into a dinghy in the middle of the night and risk your life? The first thing is I'm really sick of the politicising of this particular issue. This has got nothing to do with asylum seeking or immigration. This has got to do with human trafficking. This has got to do with a mafia out there. And we, first of all, internationally, have to get together, have a task force, and stop these buggers in their tracks. They are nothing but modern-day Nazis, modern-day mafiosi. We have to go for them. We have to make sure that we identify who's coordinating it, who's paying them, who's laundering their money, and we hit them where it hurts. This is financial crime with human casualties. We have to get together with all of the crime agencies across the world and deal with this. Otherwise, we will soon see hundreds of thousands of people moving around the world and dying. And that is not acceptable. It's not political, it's criminal. Deal with it.
I must just say, by the way, I do think you used a word that we can't use at tea time. So if anyone was indeed offended by that, I do apologise. I share the sentiments that, of course, we need to look at asylum more broadly and how we manage that. But that's fine. But there is a real-time situation, an urgent, desperate situation that needs to be stopped right in the here and right now. Because, this whole kind of tough talk that the government, you're mentioning some of the examples of what Priti Patel does, it's not achieving anything. The money that we're sending over to France in its tens of millions is not achieving anything. And there is a need to do something. Now, you talk about wave machines, and it's when you sit here, and it's the problem that we've got today is we're having this conversation under the shadow of the awful, as David just said, the awful human tragedy. So, of course, that changes the dynamic of the sentiment of the conversation somewhat. But nonetheless, we do have to be proactive, I would say, at protecting the border, at pushing back people that want to make illegal crossings here. As often economic migrants, we have to have better legal routes for people to be able to do that. But in the here and now, we have to have proactive government decisions and action to stop it.
And I agree. And I think that one of the problems we have is that you have a government that likes to talk tough about borders and, particularly in relation to the discussion about Brexit, I think Boris Johnson in particular uses Brexit as a, we're now sorting out our borders, and it's quite clear that the government hasn't got control of its borders. I'm someone who wants a very liberal and open approach to borders. I want far more people to be able to come into this country, whether they're asylum seekers, whether they're migrants. I think that, immigration is in itself a good. But you have to,
But surely in a controlled manner, though, right?
In a controlled manner, you have to have rules, but I think that those rules can be open and much more open and liberal than they are at the moment. I mean, I've mentioned labour shortages, but also I just think there's something in people come. We often characterise refugees and asylum seekers as kind of helpless and desperate. And of course, you don't need a wave machine at the moment. We've just had the weather report. I mean, trying to cross the channel at the moment is a life or death situation, and you have to ask the question, how do people get into a situation in which they're willing to risk their lives in that kind of desperate need? But also there's, what is the good about someone coming to try to make a better life for themselves? That is the good in immigration, is that there is a kind of human element, a very human element to it, which is about aspiration. And I think too often we end up going down, what's the coercive measure? What's the most penalising measure? How can we push people back brutally? And the government has to be honest and say, if they're going to talk about tough measures, whether it be wave machines or pushing boats back, people are going to die. And why not look at a different way of making the routes easier, making them more accessible, and actually having an open discussion about how immigration can be more open and liberal? I think people are up for that discussion.
And I think lots of you are getting in contact, and there is a real strong sentiment here that people shouldn't be doing this, making this crossing, that this is an illegal crossing. I've got so many people asking me to point out that crossing is illegal, and of course I do think we all know that, and the question is, how? What do we do? How do we stop that? I often reference what some might call the controversial policy that Australia did, Operation Sovereign Borders. I think it's in 2013, when they had a variety of things. One of them was a 10-back mission, but they also did things like very strong communications into the areas that were trafficking these people, to make it clear it was a criminal activity and it wouldn't be tolerated, etc. If you've got any ideas of what the government should be doing to try and solve this situation, do get in touch with me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll be asking, is Boris Johnson the man for the job? Why do I ask? Well, because apparently some MPs have written to the powerful backbench 1922 committee saying that they have got no confidence in him. But do you? First though, let's have a quick look at the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good evening. A cold feel tomorrow, but generally a sunny day. Come Friday and Saturday, however, we're in for much livelier weather. Very strong winds and some wet weather too. An area of low pressure is going to bring some snow showers through the night across northern Scotland, and actually here already turning very, very windy, those isobars squeezing together. For England and Wales at the moment, we've got this weather front sinking south. That's providing a lot of cloud and some drizzly conditions over the Midlands, South Wales and South West England through the evening. A bit of patchy rain later tonight for East Anglia and the South East. But behind that, clearer skies will bring a chill first thing. Temperatures down to 2 or 3 degrees. That's in towns and cities. Add on that wind and it really will feel pretty raw on Thursday morning. But generally it's a fine and sunny start. Now through the day tomorrow there will be some showers grazing the east coast of England, at times Pembrokeshire, Cornwall too, the eastern side of Northern Ireland. The showers in northern Scotland falling as snow over the hills, hail likely down to lower levels, and the wind's slowly easing here, but nevertheless a cold wind blowing for much of the day. Temperatures only 6 or 7 for most places. Add on that wind, it feels even colder. Things turning pretty cold pretty quickly on Thursday evening, but up to the north we're going to see wet weather pushing in. Some snow on the hills, and this zone of rain will slip its way steadily southwards during Friday. A lot of cloud around, outbreaks of rain, and increasingly windy. And increasingly the showers turning back to snow over northern Scotland. So a cause for concern as this weather turns very lively through Friday and Saturday. Low pressure heading through the North Sea. Look at those isobars pinching together. A Met Office wind warning in place across northern Britain on Friday, and more widely across the UK on Saturday. Gust of wind 50-60 miles an hour inland, stronger than that on the coast, could cause some disruption. If you're travelling on Friday or Saturday, keep up to date with the forecast.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back. Now, Boris Johnson's deputy, Dominic Raab, has dismissed criticism of the Prime Minister's leadership after it's emerged that Tory MPs have sent letters of no confidence to the party's powerful 1922 committee. Tory anger has been brewing in the party ever since the Owen Paterson scandal. Of course, you've had the row about sleaze and second jobs. You've had the whole rail thing, Northern Rail, that has happened, and now, most recently, the social care cap. Many in the party were further angered, apparently, after Mr Johnson's, he says CBI speech, but I'm going to call it its Peppa Pig speech. I'm sure you will remember the one that I'm talking about. But I want to know, because there is a lot of Boris Johnson bashing that goes on, isn't there, at the moment? And I know that a lot of my viewers, a lot of you get in touch with me and you ask me to leave Boris Johnson alone, and why are we always knocking him? And often I say to you, I would love nothing more than to get behind the Prime Minister of this country. But you have to admit, even if you're in that camp, he is giving the opposition a lot of own goals at the moment, isn't he? Mark, Russia, do you have confidence in Boris Johnson as the leader of the UK?
Well, yes, because he's a winner of election. The problem is that things are not going well, and the sign is this letter, so-called letter, to MPs, the 2022 committee, because I remember Thatcher fell. Because I just arrived in the UK for Le Monde. Thatcher fell 1 year after an absolutely unknown MP sent a letter of no confidence. And so, although he will, as Dominic Raab said, very easily defeat this no confidence, it's a sign that there is a restive mood in his Conservative group with such a majority. I think his strength, though, is that he's an inspiring figure compared to Keir Starmer. And the fact is, he's the only politician on the continent, in Belgium, in France, that people are interested in.
Did you find him inspiring when he was doing his CBI talk?
Well, yes, because it looked, he was lost, but at the same time, he was funny. And he said, well, it happens, and people will forget all that when it comes to the election anyway.
Yeah, just for the viewers, the way it works, by the way, when the 1922 committee, they have to, a leadership contest is triggered if 15% of sitting MPs write a letter to the chair of this committee. So just to give you some numbers there, that would be about 54 letters. There's always confidence around these letters, so you never really truly know publicly how many we've got. So the rumours currently are there are about 12, but the reality is we don't really know. Ella, your thoughts?
Well, I think it would be a disappointment if all of this has happened because of the stupid Peppa Pig CBI conference talk. Because the thing about Boris Johnson, and I'm no fan, is that people kind of know that he's a bit of a fool, that he does this, or a pretend fool, that he does this kind of thing in speeches. He bumbles, it's part of his charm. No one really, I don't think anyone particularly hero worships him for it, but they don't, that's not a put-off. It never has been. He's done that for years. He did that when he was London mayor. For me, obviously there's many in the Conservative Party that will be very angry at the way in which the government, and in particular Boris Johnson, handled the so-called sleaze scandal, making a complete hash of the issue of Owen Paterson and then opening up the party for scrutiny from all angles. But I think that there's a lot to criticise Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party for, many issues that you've covered on this programme, about the handling of lockdown, about the kind of mishandling of civil liberties, the lax way in which they've treated democracy over the last 20 months, enacting laws here, there and everywhere without proper scrutiny. For him to fall over Peppa Pig would seem like an incredibly infantile way of looking at this.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it is just over the Peppa Pig thing. I think that there's, mischief makers is the way I would probably summarise it everywhere. When you've got someone who has power and has personality and therefore has presence, a lot of people do just want to knock that person, whoever it is, by the way, in whatever context it is. Lots of you are already starting to email in. I knew I would get this. Sticking up for Boris, lots of you. And Peter is one of them, says, Dewbs, you've got to put the speech Boris delivered to the CBI into perspective. Had he read out exactly what someone else had written down for him in the right order, everything would have been great. Unfortunately, Boris mixed up the order of the pages and then had to deliver his speech, reflecting what was going around in his head. Peter, have you never heard of a stapler? That's what I do when I've got lots of pages. I staple them together. I said that the other day. I should charge for my services. I should charge Boris Johnson to help him in this way, introducing him to staplers and the such like. But on a serious note, David, what do you think? Is Boris Johnson the man for the job?
Well, the first thing is the CBI is an outdated organisation. As a businessman, as an entrepreneur, it's very much 19th century stuff. Boris Johnson
grabs the headlines, though.
I know, and not necessarily for a bad way. People engage with Boris Johnson because of his personality and his charm and his charisma. Charisma can be described as the ability to influence without reason. He has star quality, and the Tory party are only about winning. As soon as it looks like he won't win, he's out, and he knows that. And he's a brilliant, brilliant cheerleader. He's a mascot. He'd make a brilliant king, actually.
Is he an effective leader, though? Is he the man to rebuild the economy and the country, to pull us all back together again, not just post-Brexit, but post this whole pandemic, and get us on the right track? Do you think he's got that? If the country was a business and you was the founder of this business, would he be the CEO for this job, in your mind?
I think if we had, let's say, a business like McDonald's, he'd be Ronald McDonald. He wouldn't be organising the cash flows. And I think I have one real criticism of Boris Johnson, and that is he's fine when everything's okay, and he was a great mayor of London, I think. He made us all feel good, and he had an efficient staff behind him. I'm not so sure he's got a very good team behind him. I think a lot of good, experienced Conservatives left when he got power, were driven out by the chaos over Brexit, and I think I think his team aren't good enough. I think he's okay. I think he can make people feel good. He just needs help. So we've got to get this country together, and he needs able politicians, and he doesn't have them in his cabinet.
Yeah, I mean, if someone needs help, then I wonder, are you the right person to lead? Because I don't mind people needing help if they're the juniors in the team or the newbies, but I think the man at the top needing help, he should be the one that's doing the helping, and he should be the one that's galvanising and leading. And you keep getting in touch with me and let me know what it is that you think. Boris Johnson, Declan has said he's got absolutely no confidence in the man, and I believe MPs should have been putting their letters in sooner. Okay, but what do you think? I'm going to move on, I think, to another topic. I can see lots of you are still emailing in about the migrant situation. I have to say, it's an awful, very, very sad development that's happened today, isn't it? Anyway, let's move on, talk about COVID, I think. It's that topic, isn't it? And it's one of those topics, you know, people sit and they talk about the numbers every single day, and part of me thinks, oh, for goodness sake, stop talking about COVID. The other part of me, as I often say on this programme, sees what is going on across the world and genuinely thinks the world is going mad in its responses to COVID. But the latest figures have shown that there's been an increase in the numbers of people with COVID in the UK. I do have to caveat that, though, because yes, there's been an increase in the number of cases in the UK, but there has also been an increase in the number of testing done in the UK. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that if you increase the number of testing that you're doing, then of course you are highly likely to increase the number of cases that you're finding. I find it always interesting the way we manage these statistics and the data points that we seem to collect, because I've got to say, for me, a more interesting number would be looking at the positive test rate of cases. But nonetheless, we're seeing lockdowns pretty much everywhere at the moment, aren't we? Well, not everywhere, that's an exaggeration, got to be honest. But across Europe, we're seeing lots of lockdowns. And it made me wonder, are we going to be heading, do you think, Mark, to a lockdown here? And if we did, do you think it would be tolerated, accepted by citizens? Because when I mention places like Europe, which is not just in Europe, it's beyond places like Australia, etc. Yes, they're having lockdowns, but also they are having huge unrest, massive protests in the streets, which are not often covered in the media, but nonetheless, they are there and they are happening, and people are standing up against this.
Well, I'm coming from Belgium, and we have there the latest count. It's as bad for a country of 11 million that it is in the UK, 42,000. There is partial lockdown, there's unrest, and the poorest part of the population are rioting against a semi-lockdown and especially against the project of the government to have a vaccination pass, like the French have. Clearly, the UK is not in that situation. Basically, it's 42,000 day after day. Hospitalization are keeping the same. Vaccination is improving. I don't think there's a fear of lockdown here because the economy is starting to do well. And, you know, who said lockdown? Say furlough, and I don't think anyone wants a lockdown and no money then to live on. So I'm quite optimistic for the UK, quite pessimistic for Europe, because people don't like this coercive, you spoke about human rights being curtailed, coercive measure. And so in the UK, people riot in general, much less.
Yeah, and David, I touched there very briefly on data. I mean, we've been going on with this, probably not too shy of 2 years now, the whole COVID situation, and it still fascinates me why we use the data set that we do, because obviously the data is driving the decisions, which is going to impact all of our lives. But still, for example, when we talk about someone dying, a COVID death, what they actually mean is within 28 days of a positive test, which could be anything. It's freezing cold in here. You could sit here now and die of hypothermia.
I think I might.
I know, I think you might. I need to have that is a not too subtle hint, by the way, for the people in the background to turn the heating up. But joking aside, the way we capture data, so within 28 days of a positive test is still regarded as a COVID test. We talk often / always about how many cases we've got without necessarily giving the equal attention to how much testing that we're doing. We talk about hospitalizations, but we never talk about things like comorbidities. What percentage of people that are on ventilation or have died have got serious comorbidities that have put them there or certainly contributed to them being there? What's your thoughts on that from a data perspective?
Well, one of my businesses, my main business day to day is now genetics and its interaction with healthcare. So we're beginning to learn a lot. I should say that fundamentally the real worry are new variants, and we don't know what's going to happen. And I think this is, for the rest of our lives, we're going to have COVID running around, so we better get used to it. And taking these statistics as a way of making policy, saying, well, 28 days, 30 days, you don't save lives, you just extend them. but also you have to be aware of a quality of life. Now, my mother died a few months ago, and she rang up a GP, couldn't get an appointment. She had a fever. She was being sick. They sent her a COVID test. She was negative. She went phew, and then died because she'd actually had a heart attack. And that human cost, that's ridiculous. Statistics out the window, please. Can we get on with our lives? Can we get on with, maybe we should create a second health service just for dealing with COVID, right? Maybe we should do that. But we've got to get on. We've got to live. We've got to educate our children. We've got to earn money. We've got to engage with this magnificent and very short life we have.
Yeah, and Ella, I think one of the points that David's raised there is an interesting one, because it's all about all these lockdowns. They're talking about, oh, you know, we want to save lives, but to what extent? Because if all you do is lock people down, make their lives miserable, take away their incomes, their businesses, their social lives, their contact with their loved ones, their development if they're a child, if all you do is basically confine people to their homes, and then waves come anyway once you release all these lockdowns often, then what have you actually achieved? The byproducts, the unintended consequences of lockdown are huge.
Yeah, well, I mean, people forget, and in particular politicians forget, that lockdown was brought in originally as it was an expression of a failure. You know, we had a
3 weeks to flatten the curve,
and it was a means of dealing with the fact that we had a healthcare system that couldn't cope with this sudden new thing that none of us knew anything about and was terrifying. And so, but you know, 20 months on from that first period of shock of the introduction of coronavirus into our lives, that lockdown as an emergency measure doesn't make sense anymore. And the reason why it particularly doesn't make sense is because the goalposts have changed around how we define the danger of this virus. Now, you know, 1,000 people or something like that are still dying. There's huge numbers of people still dying. It's not, we're not kind of like over the hill and far away into the sunny uplands. There's still a situation to be dealt with. But we now have quite large numbers of vaccinations. We have a booster system in place, which, you know, it was sluggish to begin with, is now picking up pace. And the increase of cases, this is the most important point, the increase of cases doesn't necessarily mean a terrible situation of death and destruction, because we know that, in particular, young people who catch the virus have natural immunity, can contribute towards, you know, no one uses the word herd immunity anymore because you sound like you're some kind of evil witch, but can contribute towards a future which we need, which is a population that has a level of immunity to it. We know that it's much better if you get the vaccination, and we know it's much better, particularly for older people, if they get that booster. But we're getting towards a situation in which, hopefully, you will be able to deal with the onslaught of variants or the continuation of this virus in a more manageable way, because we have either natural immunity or immunity from the vaccination. Why the government and commentators are focusing on the negatives, threatening coercion, going down the Austria route or something like that, rather than celebrating the positives of the vaccination, of the human miracle of medicine, is beyond me.
Well, let me know what you think about lockdown. And particularly, one of the things that I'm intrigued about, there's often talk about Christmas, for example. Would you, if there was indeed another lockdown, how would you react to it? How would you respond to it? Because one of the things that fascinates me is some of the language that's getting used and how it's being used about things that we've got to do to save Christmas, for example. And I sit there and I think, well, hang on a second. Christmas doesn't belong to you. This isn't this holiday season, the time to be with your family, the time to be with your loved ones. This isn't some perk that an MP can take off me. And I have to say, absolutely, I did respect it last year. But this year, I have ringing around my mind all the things that we've seen, all of the, you know, you'll remember Matt Hancock telling us to do one thing while simultaneously doing another. Neil Ferguson, another example. And I could go on because there's quite a few examples, but for time reasons, I won't. You get my gist, don't you? Anyway, do get in touch with me. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. Get in touch with me and let me know your thoughts, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs. Anyway, let's move on to a different topic. After the break, we are going to be looking at Brexit. You know, Brexit's happened, don't you worry. I'm not going to rehash that debate, not least because some of you will know that I even ran for the Brexit party. So I think you know where I stand on that. But it's done. Is it dusted? What do we do to make our economy thrive post-Brexit? That's the bit that I'm interested in. Join me after the break and we'll be talking about that.
Coming up Wednesday on Dan Wootton Tonight. Is the migrant crisis now a national emergency? We'll debate in The Clash and get your verdict. After that bombshell BBC documentary, Robert Johnson joins me to discuss our royal headlines that were exposing infighting in the firm, plus where the monarchy goes from here. Will Boris be able to hold on in number 10? Will Trump return to the White House? Celebrity psychic Sally Morgan predicts the future of the world's most notable figures. Plus, Brendan O'Neill and Rod Liddle sound off on the week's biggest talking points, and I'll bring you a first look at the front pages with my superstar panel. The Daily Mail columnist Amanda Platel, the Conservative commentator Albie Amankona, and the Royal commentator Daisy McAndrew. That's Dan Wootton tonight, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Monday to Thursday on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. Now, Brexit, that topic, we all remember how divisive that was. It's happened, we voted for it. Was it a done deal? Remember that oven-ready deal that we were promised? Well, you might remember at the start of the business conference this week, Keir Starmer was saying it's not about getting Brexit done, it's about making Brexit work. I have to say, on this occasion, I most certainly do agree with him. David Tabazel, you are indeed an entrepreneur yourself. How do we make Britain prosper in this Brexit new world?
Well, I don't think there is a Brexit new world. There's just a new world, and we have to stop saying Brexit. It's Britain. We have to do some business. We have to be enthusiastic. I've just embarked upon my 27th startup, and we need Startup Britain. We really do. And, you know, I've been lucky to be part of a number of billion-dollar startups in Britain. And you know what? We need to pull together, we need to get some vision, get a plan, and get going. Countries like Israel have created multiple billion-dollar businesses, more than we have. It's there, the talent is there, the resource is there. We have stock markets, we have universities. Can we stop going on about what is essentially a divorce? Yes, it's a trauma for some people, but honestly, there's so much opportunity. Science is changing, there's genetics, there's information technology. One thing we do have now is the ability to make our own rules and laws and reduce taxes and bring in the best entrepreneurs from around the world. Can we get to work, please? Because it's fantastic. Honestly, this country is such a resource.
So it's safe to say, I think you feel optimistic about the future.
As long as these civil servants and I'm going to use the word Muppets, I hope you don't mind. I feel like a lot of the cabinet, in business terms, are Muppets, right? Get out of the way. We need to enable and encourage entrepreneurs, get people going, get people excited. And you know what? What people believe to be real is real in its consequences. If you feel optimistic and you have a can-do attitude and you can actually come up with service businesses and technology that you can export to the world and float on stock markets, we will succeed. Stop moaning. Let's aim at the positive and get on with it. Honestly, this is the most amazing second industrial revolution we have going on at the moment. The collision between biology and genetics and stock market, it's wonderful. Can we please talk about some good stuff? There's no Brexit, there's Britain, there's a future. Let's build it.
I've got to say, you've motivated me. I'm really sorry, bosses. I'm off. Never mind all this TV hosting. I'm off. You've inspired me. I'm going to go.
We've got to do this.
A technology business. Mark, do you share David's optimism?
Well, yes, on one condition, is that the UK priority has to be going back in an agreement with the European Union and stopping trying to undermine the European Union by changing the Northern Ireland Protocol, this thing about fishing. Because at the end, the two countries that have to work together, so Brexit will be a success, which I think it will, like you just said, is an agreement between France and the UK, because there are so many security, trade, and other things involved, and also cultural and the population, so many French people living in London despite Brexit. And so it's essential that Boris Johnson and the British press, a certain press, stop the French bashing. It doesn't help.
Hang on a minute.
We have to go forward.
You blame the UK for quite a bit, I have to say. I mean, Macron, he doesn't make this the smoothest, simplest transition, does he? This is certainly not the problems that we have, the UK side. But before, I just realised I've not spoken to you about this yet, Ella. So your thoughts, before I get off on my rant, your thoughts?
Well, you know, the thing, it's nice to hear Keir Starmer being positive about Brexit, seeing as he's been so utterly, him and his party have been so utterly negative about it when it really mattered in the years after Brexit. But I always get a little bit itchy around this suggestion that Brexit is done, because I think part of the problem with the way in which both the Conservative and the Labour Party has dealt with the issue of leaving the European Union is it's just a policy document. It's just like tick box, finish it. In particular, that's been one of Boris Johnson's failings, that he's not been able to tap into the spirit of Brexit, which was about democratic change and about an upheaval in British politics. And it's probably unsurprising that the British establishment isn't really up for an upheaval. But I think that's certainly what attracted me to the Brexit vote. When it comes to business and the economy, I mean, you know, Brexit wasn't the death knell in the way that it was described, economic catastrophe, loss of jobs, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think either it was the magic bullet. I mean, we like to pretend that it's kind of going to be the solve-all for the economic problems in Britain. The economy was in a bad situation before Brexit, before the pandemic, and unless we deal with those central issues of production, of wealth creation, of growth, you know, no Brexit or anything else is going to fix that.
Well, there you go. And lots of people emailing in. I've had quite a few that agrees with you, by the way, David, and says, yes, let's stop mentioning the B word and just move on with life. Do you think that is the answer? Get in touch with me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Let me know your thoughts. Let's return, though, to our top story tonight, which is now that at least 30 migrants have drowned while trying to cross the Channel. Joining us again, live from Dover in Kent, is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, what is the latest?
Well, utterly horrific as that number keeps increasing. There is still an active search and rescue operation out there in the Channel, though the chances of them finding anyone alive are slim, to say the least, after this length of time in the water. But it's involving French maritime assets and British maritime assets as well, helping in that very significant search and rescue operation following what was the capsizing of a migrant boat earlier this afternoon, with well, it seems at least 40 people on board, because a number of people have been taken to hospital. It's being, at the moment, confirmed that 31 people have died and that others may well be missing, which is why the search and rescue operation is continuing. Now, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has held an emergency meeting of the government's crisis cabinet, COBRA. After that, he came out to say that he was shocked, appalled and saddened by this tragic loss of life. But he actually, to some extent, has put the blame back on the French, saying that they haven't necessarily helped as much as they could in this effort. And he wants them to allow more in the way of British assets into France to patrol these beaches to help stop the boats leave in the first place.
OK. Thanks ever so much for that update. That's Mark White there, our home and security editor. Lots of you are getting in contact. I've got to say, many of you are sticking up for Boris Johnson. Philip says he's sick and tired of Boris getting knocked. He voted for him in 2019 and he will vote for him again, sir, there. And lots of you getting in touch and staying the same. Well, that is all we have time for tonight. Thank you very much for your company. Mark, David, Ella, thank you as well for yours. I'll be back same time tomorrow night, 6 o'clock till 7 o'clock. Have yourself a great evening and I'll see you then.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Good evening. A cold feel tomorrow, but generally a sunny day. Come Friday and Saturday, however, we're in for much livelier weather, very strong winds and some wet weather too. An area of low pressure is going to bring some snow showers through the night across northern Scotland, and actually here already turning very, very windy, those isobars squeezing together. For England and Wales at the moment, we've got this